can actually pick the best of both worlds and find what works for you.
Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Kirti Tewani. She's an entrepreneur, storyteller, and a wellness advocate who is passionate about blending ancient wisdom with modern living. She has a background that's rooted in Ayurveda, beauty, and wellness, and her mission is to make holistic living simple, approachable, and inspiring. And I first heard about her when a friend of mine wanted to tell me who in our industry, in the Ayurveda industry, was communicating Ayurveda in a way that people could really understand. Because apparently a lot of people get confused about Ayurveda or think it's overwhelming or think it's very rigid or think we use too many Sanskrit words or whatever. And so a friend of ours or mine who was aware of you pointed you out to me and I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? And we met in person last month in New York and just love her. And so excited to be here with you today and share more of your work with the Wisdom of the Body audience.
Thank you, Heather, for having me. It was actually a wonderful meeting with you because there's very less people that you meet and you just instantly click. And I think we did instantly click and we had conversations about Ayurveda and conversations not about Ayurveda. And I think a lot of it was like, oh, we're on the same page, kind of like we're matching energies, which is wonderful. Yeah. And it's hard to find people like that. So I'm glad we connected and I'm glad we met.
I know. I have to say, I really enjoyed our lunch and I miss you. And I'm glad that we're here today. So, beauty and wellness. And also, if you haven't seen her social media channels, you have to check her out because she does these amazing videos of various beauty hacks, techniques, various health and wellness tips for people. And I think she just gets so intimate with the camera, really. And when I look at you, sometimes in the videos that you do, and I imagine, could I do that? Could I let everybody see that part of me on camera and get so vulnerable the way you get? And I'm like, no, I'm so shy. And so I want to talk about that, how you're able to put yourself out there and really use your body as an incredible learning tool for people. Was that scary for you in the beginning to put yourself out there like that?
I think the most amount of hate that I get, and hate is a very strong word. So some people actually write it in a way where it sounds hateful, and some people write it in a way where it's more curiosity for them. So it's like kind of 50-50. But I think almost every single video, I have one question: why don't you color your hair? And when people ask me that way, it's like, okay, somebody's curious. But then there are people, go color your hair. You look ugly. Go color your hair. Like, I think it bothers people a lot more that I don't color my hair than I do. And I don't color my hair just because I feel like I don't have the patience to sit in a salon every 4-6 weeks, 4 hours, and it doesn't bother me. When I look at myself, I'm like, it doesn't bother me. Then why am I going through all of this? So it was just like, I don't want to color my hair. And I just let them out however they were coming out. I think that is like most times where people get very even aggressive. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, whoa, chill down. It's not your hair. Why are you getting so upset about something that doesn't belong to you on a random person, on stranger? But internet is like that. I've realized a lot of people are not even doing it because they hate me. They don't know who I am. They're just venting out their everyday frustration on the first thing that they think they can lash out on. So now sometimes I just read a weird comment. I'm like, I hope you have a better day tomorrow instead of responding, because If you think about it, like there's no reason for this person to come and hate me. If they are doing that, it's because something else is probably building up in their life and they need to vent out somewhere. And with no image, a random username, they feel safe to write whatever they can because they know they can hide behind it. So sometimes it's just like, it's fine. In the beginning, it was hard, but I think eventually, if you go take a job somewhere, and you have colleagues that are really, really nice, because that's what majority of my community is, and then you have that few toxic coworkers, but then you don't quit your job because of those few people. You just learn how to navigate around them. And I think that was my approach when it came to social media.
Mm. Yeah, it seems inevitable that the more followers you get, the more you're just going to come across that. And obviously, like, you're an incredibly beautiful woman.
Thank you.
I've seen you on camera and I've met you in person now, and she's even more beautiful in person.
That's so
Which is
kind.
funny
Thank
because
you.
that's not always the case. Like, sometimes the camera's very nice to people. Some people are very photogenic and then you meet them in person and then they're like, and sometimes it's the opposite, which I find is a really interesting thing to be able to predict about people. But the gray hair thing is obviously like a huge topic. And as one example of something that maybe somebody might point out, that when we are putting ourselves out on camera, the things that people want to point out about us, that whatever they don't agree with, they wish was different, or they would hate that about themselves or whatever. I think for me, I'm like, oh my God, I could never let people see my skin up that close. Or I'm like, wow, she's so brave showing everybody parts of her. And it feels vulnerable to me actually when I watch what you do. Like, wow, I could never do that. I could never let people see me so close. Did that, I guess, because you've always worked in the beauty field, right? Like, did that ever feel weird for you? Was it just like, no, I'm just here to show you how this is done, and just very matter of fact, and you don't have like the same kind of insecurities that I have seen close up or something?
It's interesting because the world that I come up with, you see a billboard, you see a beautiful, perfect billboard. And I've been on the other side working as a makeup artist where you hide every single imperfection on that face. And on top of that, there's editing. So the one thing that I started doing pretty early on was stopped using filters on my videos, because I wanted people to, if I'm talking about skin, I want you to be able to see my skin. If I'm talking about makeup, I want you to be able to see the makeup as it would look in person. So when I meet people in person, they're like, oh, your makeup looks very natural. I'm like, yeah, because that's my style of makeup, right? And it can translate very well. I'm very thankful that I worked with like some really successful people who taught me everything. And I also became a makeup artist in America at the time where Bobbi Brown brought the no makeup trend. And it really just sit hard with me. Like, and she was all there emphasizing skin should look like skin. It's okay to hide imperfections, I'm not saying, but it's okay if you see them too. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I think having that mindset when I went on the internet world, it kind of helped, because when people were like, oh, but I see your pores, I'm like, yeah, because everybody has pores. Some people hide it with filters, some people don't. Like, nobody has poreless skin. When I had a pimple, I actually shared it with my community. Oh, look, I'm not perfect. Like, it's just a part of being a human being. And I feel like that false image that has been portrayed on social media doesn't help other women uplift. It gives the same vibe of looking at a billboard and then trying to compare yourself to that billboard. But that billboard has hundreds and thousands of, sometimes even millions of dollars behind it, just in the production team. But people have no idea how much a person can change with makeup, hair, and good styling and good lighting and good photography. Like, it could be like a day and night difference. So I think one of my goals was like, when I started incorporating a little bit of Ayurveda and a little bit of beauty, because I wanted to blend the two worlds, was like, show up as your most authentic self. It's okay to show up with imperfections. It's okay to hide them if that gives you confidence too. Like, so there's no right or wrong. There's like, if you feel safe hiding your grace and that gives you the confidence to be who you are, do it. And if you don't want to do it. We all have a choice, right? And I feel like the world that we're living in, people just kind of are still living in like, yeah, but nobody ever did that. Yeah, but you can. The door is always open for you to be the cycle breaker and start and begin that journey whenever you think you're ready, rather than waiting for X person to open the door for you and then you make the effort. So I think I've always had that I'll just figure it out kind of approach.
I love it. I love it so much. You were in beauty before you got super into Ayurveda, right?
Correct.
How did that change your relationship with beauty when you started to study Ayurveda?
I think one of the biggest things that I realized that a moisturizer will not take away all your pimples. It's your diet that will do most of it. I grew up in a house where like this is what's made. If you don't want to eat, good night. So I always ate everything. It became like really nice thing. And my mom always used to cook at home most days. So I never broke out as a teenager. I never went through acne, pimple cycles. I never had like bad skin was like, oh my God, I have one pimple. Like these three pimples that came now are like the most amount of pimples I can remember looking back in like at the same time. So for me, it was like a lot of things to be understood because before that, I was always like, oh no, this is a great cleanser. This is a great moisturizer. And you should definitely, definitely use it if you have acne and pimples. But when I started incorporating Ayurveda, I learned that your skin is the visual representation of your gut. So I'm not saying the moisturizers and the skincare doesn't work, but it only does the lowest 20% of the job. The top 80% of the job is done by whatever you're eating, how you're sleeping, your stress levels. And it's not just diet, because that's one thing that Ayurveda has taught me. Like, it's not just about focusing on diet, but it's a combination of diet, lifestyle, habits, stress levels, everything that even emotions. And like my premature gray hair is a visual representation of imbalanced emotions, right? If you practice Ayurveda, you will understand that. But there's always this disconnect where people just jump from one product to another without realizing you also need to work on the inside. And I
Mm,
think one of the biggest things that Ayurveda helped me learn was like it's the combination of two, neither one or the other. Because of course you
mm.
use a very greasy, as we were talking before, a very greasy sunscreen, the chances are your skin's not going to do well either.
Yeah. I'm curious with Ayurveda, was there a moment in your life that you can remember where you really realized that piece that you're talking about, where the products are not going to solve it, that it has to go deeper? Was there like a specific problem that you had, or you noticed something happen with someone you were working with? Do you have any examples of that to share?
So my mom is a working, living example of Ayurveda. And, she healed her entire life with Ayurveda. She had every physical, emotional problem that you could imagine. And now she's like, I'll just leave it to the universe. Like that shift in not just the mindset, but also like physical health, emotional health was such a drastic shift for me to see. So it's like, okay, something about this works, right? And before that, when my mom used to tell me, oh, your pitta is too high, your vata is too high, I'm like, just keep your vata pitta in your pocket. Can you talk like a normal person? And she's like, you'll one day come to me and talk to me. And like in a typical mom and daughter relationship. And then when I had kids, things became different because the first approach when my child got sick was not go to the medicine cabinet, was like, what can I give them naturally to help ease? So now the moment I hear like a little bit of congestion in my kids, I start doing the nasal massage every night so that they never get that major blockage and start to prevent as much as possible. So I think that was the main approach. And also like my son was born with eczema. When I was pregnant, I thought like I ate the healthiest one can ever eat. And then I realized that I eat too spicy food and I'm not used to eating spicy food. And now when I connect the dots with Ayurveda, I know the reason for his eczema, exactly why it happened. If you understand Ayurveda, you probably would understand. So it took me a while to understand and how not just what you're doing now, but what has been done in the past also can impact your health in a much bigger way. So it's been very helpful for me to navigate. My daughter, again, the mistakes I made, she is sensitive to gluten, thankfully, just sensitive, right? And with Ayurveda, I've been able to navigate it to a point where she can eat gluten once in a while and be totally okay with it. So it's been a journey, but you have to believe in it, right? You have to give it a fair shot because a lot of people start, and as they always say, like most people come to Ayurveda as a last resort. I thankfully didn't do that. I went to Ayurveda because I saw it work for my mom. I had an example in front of me. So I'm like, okay, it probably will work for me. And I also don't think we have to choose just modern medicine or just Ayurveda. I've always said, like, it's not a competition between the two. You pick the best of the both world and see what works for your body. And I think a lot of people miss that element. And that's why, as you mentioned previously, Ayurveda becomes very overwhelming for people. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't have to wake up every day at 4 a.m. and do the whole rituals, and only then you are considered an Ayurvedic person. Like, there's no such title. Even if you do certain small things that make you feel a little bit healthier version from where you started, you are practicing Ayurveda. And I think, and this is something I have learned over time too, a lot of gurus on the internet, the way the messaging come out is very fear-based messaging. And I might have done it in the past. I'm not saying I've never done it. But when I started realizing, I'm like, no, that's not the approach we want to put out in the world. And I think if you go like through that journey, even I have approached how I put content, because we need to be approachable to people for them to take our advice. So when I talk about oil pulling, I'm just talking about oil pulling. Okay, you got onto oil pulling. Hey, now start cleaning your tongue, because it takes 2 seconds. And once you start doing, just try it. Like, but no, sometimes it's like no explanations. Like, because your mouth will feel, why should I clean my tongue? So instead of going on the basics, because it's ama in your body, metabolic waste, blah, blah, you're going to taste food better. And they just look at me like, what? I'm like, yeah, imagine you have all of that white thing sitting on your tongue. You probably don't taste food the same way. So if you just clean your tongue, and then it's a perception that they start believing, oh, I taste food better. And if they really want to start practicing a little bit, then you add more information to it and be like, oh, by the way, also this, and this, rather than dumping someone with information. They're like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. So I think that is one approach that is missing for a lot of people when we start talking about Ayurveda.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up oil pulling because it's a helpful practice. And I know it's gotten very popular. It's funny. I actually used to be the head of product development for a dental insurance company. And I remember like we had all these marketing materials and, all the plans. Like it was my job to like help bring all the actuaries and like all the people together to create the insurance plans to decide what's going to be like covered in the plan. And during that time, there was, talk about whether or not 2 cleanings a year is enough for people and stuff like that. And dentists are incredible at getting people into their office every 6 months, right? Because when you leave, they have you go to the person at the front desk and set up your next appointment. And it's like this calming ritual somehow of going to your dentist every 6 months. But what's funny is that I have not been to the dentist. I'm not going to say how many years.
You should. You should.
Like someday I will disclose this, but I have not been in so many years. Well, one, I have a Sonicare, and I think that's like an incredible toothbrush. I don't get paid by them. Maybe I should. But oil pulling is such a powerful practice for preventive care. And I've seen you do it on your page. So if anybody has a question about how to do oil pulling, please go to one of her social media pages and she will show you how to do it.
I actually have. So I started talking about oil pulling way before it was trending on TikTok. And the reason I made a video about oil pulling was because I did not take care of my teeth as a child. No one told me I should brush twice a day. So I have a lot of fillings done in my mouth. And I got to a point in life where my entire mouth was sensitive. And long story short, the dentist just gave me an estimate of almost $8,000. and said, we need to redo all your fillings. And my brain was like, this is after insurance, after having dental insurance. And I was like, how is it possible that all of my fillings gone bad at the same time? Like my brain could not comprehend that concept. And I was going to go home. So I went home, and so home for me is Spain for context here. And I went to this dentist who was new, only spoke German, and we were having like communication issues. But she did like basically nothing on my teeth. And she was like, you're fine, just use this toothpaste and you'll be okay. And I'm like, but there I was told to redo every single thing, and you're telling me all my fillings are okay. And then I found a friend who's also a dentist, and he spoke Spanish and I speak Spanish. So we were able to communicate. And he was like, well, I will redo this half a filling here. There was like a tiny hole somewhere. And then he explained me that your mouth is sensitive because of grinding, not because your cavities are bad. Your cavities are totally fine. Whoever did them, they did a decent job. You have plenty of life left in them, but you need to get a mouth guard and stop grinding. And that was the first time someone explained me that the sensitivity was not because of so, and I'm not saying all dentists are like that, but the dentist I happen to go to did not give me the correct information. So that's again diving deep into Ayurveda. I'm like, I'm going to start oil pulling consistently. And within 30 days, along with getting a mouth guard, my sensitivity was gone because I was at a point I couldn't drink hot water, I couldn't drink cold water, I couldn't eat properly. It was bad. It was super, super sensitive. My gums were inflamed because of grinding, all the pressure was going up. And at that time, I was just using plain coconut oil, and I did it. I was gagging all the time, but I still did
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah, because it's kind of a little bit unpleasant sometimes, all that oil in your mouth.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
pleasant thing to do. And I'm like, it helped me, and there's a potential this practice is going to help. So I remember the first video that I posted about oil pulling, it probably has like 5, 7, 8 million views. I can't even remember, on TikTok. And I got up, I had this sweatshirt that said, gray hair, don't care. And I put my makeup on at like 9 p.m. at night a little bit. And then I made that oil pulling video. And I never expected it to hit the algorithm in the way that it did. But that made me realize how many people could benefit from this simple practice of oil pulling. And then after doing a little bit of more research, I found the Guru Nanda brand that I think is fantastic if anybody wants to hop on. But again, it's a preventative practice that can prevent a lot of problems coming in, but at the same time, you have to be consistent. It's not a trend. For me, oil pulling was never about hopping on a trend and dropping it. I have stayed consistent with my oil pulling practice. And thanks to that, even my last visit at the dentist, they say, we might need to redo this filling. And I went back, and this time I found a really nice dentist. Like, nope, you're all good. Keep doing your oil pulling and whatever you're doing. So it's been great since then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how different people react to it. I want to talk about Spain and why people think Spanish people are so healthy and whether that's debatable. But I first want to talk about products because I am sure that you must get a million products sent to you
I do.
to try, right? And I even get some, right? I don't have as big of a following as you do. And I get them a lot too. And what's cool is that a lot of them have actually become products that are part of my daily routine now because somebody might send me 5 products and then I really like one of them and I latch onto it and then I like use that forever. But people are really obsessed with products, right? And I see this, when I do a consultation with somebody and I ask them like, all right, tell me, I ask them everything that they eat and whatever in their life, but then I'm like, tell me all the things you're putting on your skin too. And I'm always amazed at how much stuff people use. What's a healthy relationship with products? What does that look like for someone, right? Because it could be with makeup, it could be with cleaning, moisturizing, whatever. Like, where is this balance between too much and not enough? Like, how would you describe a healthy relationship with it?
And I could be wrong about it, but this is just my perception. I think a lot of people find joy in doing skincare. So they like to do the whole routine because that's like their me time, right? So they're like, I'm going to use my cleanser, my toner, my mask, then I'm going to use my serum, my moisturizer, and then I'm going to go to bed with a wrapping mask or something. But it brings them joy. It brings them me time. It makes them feel good about them. So it's a feeling that most people have, right? Because if you see, my skin has gone through recently a little bit ups and downs, but there was a time I used this $10 jojoba oil every single day and it worked fantastic for my skin. Now, I was a little bit younger. Now I'm not there. So I do need more hydration than that. But also, it depends where you are again, right, in your life. Oil pulling. Now, you can totally take sesame oil, you can totally take coconut oil, melt it, and do your practice, right? It does not taste good. I was always gagging. So I found a product that works for me and I stick to it, right? For me, it became convenient, a way to stay consistent with my practice rather than dreading. So, just a simple example, let's say you play tennis, right? And you're still learning tennis. But if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to put the effort into it. You're like, oh, I have to get up and go tennis again. You're going to drop the ball eventually because it's a learning process. When I was doing my oil pulling, it was like a learning process. And then I was gagging and it was like, oh my God, another day, another day. And then I found this, which is more palatable. It always stays liquid, so I don't have to go melt it in my double boiling at
Mm-hmm.
6:30 a.m. in the morning, and it's convenient. So some people do it because they like it. Some people do it because of convenience. And some people, and it's a sad way to say or to think, but they're so attached to materialistic things that is the only way they're finding pleasure or joy. And that could be different for different people. Some people because they're alone, some people because they have work issues, some people because they're exhausted with their lifestyle, some people because they're trying to keep up. There could be millions of reasons. So I feel like it's more an emotional thing than anything else, like an emotional trigger, like I'm going to buy this and that's going to bring me joy. I'm going to buy this and that's going to bring me happiness. And I feel like it's okay if that's keeping you sane and happy. It's just like, eventually, I hope when they get to the point of that realization, I just hope like everybody comes to a point like everything materialistic is just a part of your life. It's not something that's going to bring you joy, eternal happiness, long term happiness. And the fourth reason is like a lot of people tie success to what somebody owns. The size of your house determines your success in life. What car you own determines the success of your life. What handbag do you have? Like people check you out. Oh, she has a good handbag. Maybe she has more partnerships. Like it's sad, but that is also an not so pretty reality.
I love those insights. And I think just from dealing with beauty and makeup, that you've probably seen a lot of these relationships. And those are really, really, really good insights. Thanks so much for sharing that. Now, you grew up in Spain, right?
Well, I grew up in India. I
Okay.
moved to Spain when I was 16. So,
Okay. So both India and Spain. And so let's talk a little bit about that because you come from India, you go to Spain, then you come to the US after that. And now you go, I think, back and forth between all of those places, right? And I've heard a lot of people say, in particular of European countries, that Spain is one of the healthiest countries. And it's funny because I've actually not been to Spain yet. I've been to other European countries. I've not been to Spain. But I'm curious because what I've heard about Spain and what I've heard about their lifestyles and eating behaviors and things like that, that there's a lot of late night eating. And I'm curious, first of all, would you agree that Spanish people and the culture are a healthy culture? And which parts of it do you think are that healthy part?
I mean, here's the thing, right? Again, I'm not perfectly defining this, but a lot of people smoke in Spain, right? But even then, they are in a much healthier shape than a lot of the rest of the world. And I think the credit goes to siesta. I definitely think because it gives them a break, a disconnect from, imagine you're working 4 hours, then you take a little break and then you work 4 hours. So your body got a chance to decompress and, to like release everything and all right, let's go back to it. Rather than going 8 hours nonstop or 9 hours or 10 hours, like depending on how much people work. And I think Spain doesn't have a hustle culture. Yes, people hustle everywhere if they really need to, but the culture itself is like, okay, fine, I'll get it done. Nobody's like, now. Like, I don't think Spain believes. And I think stress is one of the leading causes of most of the diseases we have, even slowing down metabolism. And I don't think Spanish people have much of that, or they care much about it. It's also the mindset. I think they have a very protective mindset about their own culture. And that's the beauty of Spain. So every time I spent the entire summer in Spain and I met this British couple who was complaining about siesta and like, I can't get anything done. I'm like, well, if you want to get things done, go back to the UK. You can get things done there. And he's just looking at me like, you cannot expect to come to a country for the benefits and then try to change. Spain is what it is because it's rooted in its culture. And siesta and, taking things easy is a part of that culture. Like, you want to do things, go back to your country. And that applies to me, that applies to everyone. And I'm like, you cannot expect Spanish people to open their stores on a Fiesta del Carmen that they believe in, that's their roots, just because it's inconvenient for you. Then you don't belong here if you cannot blend into what Spain has to offer, because it has great food. And every country has its own negative sides. I'm not saying Spain is perfect. No country is, right? But Spain thrives on its culture. It is a very culture, like you go to north of Spain, they have a different food culture, they have different dances, they have everything is, then you go to the south of Spain, it's like different dance forms, different food. Again, a lot of they're more heavy on the seafood. So every place has its beauty, right? When people try to go and change that, it is always, to me, is like questionable. Like, the system's not going to change for just you and me. There are, of course, a lot of things that should change in the whole world because there's no one who's perfect. But I think that's why Spanish people are a little bit healthier, even though they smoke more, they party more. I'm sure they catch up on sleep at siestas. But yeah, I think it's the culture that makes them healthy, the mindset that makes them healthy.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I first thought of this question to ask you, I was like, why don't we think about, okay, can we take the best things from Spain, the best things from India, the best, this is my, like wanting to create a hodgepodge of like the best of everything. But what
Yeah.
I hear you saying is that there's this beauty in the culture as it exists and the whole sort of like when in Rome concept and really absorbing yourself and surrendering into that culture and not expecting it to be different than it is in its essence. And maybe that's very Ayurvedic in a way, like don't expect this person to be like the person that you want them to be rather than their nature and who they are in their essence, right?
Like, we go to Italy and by day 3, we're like, I can't eat more pizzas and pastas. You don't have to. There is more food available in Italy. Just go find it. It's like,
Yeah.
Italians don't eat pizzas and pasta for every meal. I bet they don't have that for every single meal.
Yeah.
So I think that disconnect where people are like, Italy is more than pizza and pasta. Spain is more than how you want to perceive it or how you want to see it. And every culture has it. India, people, when they think of India, oh, the beauty, the colors, and yeah, but it's a lot more than that. And
Mm-hmm.
when you start, like, you can actually take the best of all world, but then you cannot say that I'm going to change the rest because it's not working for me. Like,
Mm-hmm. What do you love about India?
oh my God. What do I love about India? So I have this debate that I don't know if people are going to be upset if I say that. But India is a beautiful country, very rich in culture. You travel from north to south, you're going to see so much diversity, language, religion, and so many other things. But I think Indian people have this habit of imposing their thoughts, their culture, their everything on someone else sometimes. And when it comes to Ayurveda, even when I make videos on Ayurveda, people sometimes attack me saying, oh, you're trying to take from Sanatan Dharma. And I'm like, well, you don't know. There is no proof in the history that Ayurveda was written by an Indian person. Because if you go deep down into that rabbit hole, Ayurveda, the scriptures were found in the Indus Valley, right? The Indus Valley civilization, which now I believe is Afghanistan, Pakistan kind of area. But that was a trade pathway coming and going. So we don't know who wrote. Maybe Africans wrote it, maybe Europeans wrote it, maybe Eastern Europeans wrote it, maybe Indians wrote it. I'm not saying no. We don't know who wrote Ayurveda. And then that was translated into a book. And this is my theory, right? And I love Ayurveda. But then that was translated into a book. We don't know if that translation was 100% accurate because not a lot of people were able to read those scriptures correctly. And then those books were then translated into Sanskrit. Again, I'm sure there was a lot of information that we lost in those translations. So when somebody comes and tries to claim like Ayurveda belongs to Sanatan Dharma, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. We found it, so we claimed it. It's like founders keepers, but we don't have a proof in the history that it belongs or it originated. Yes, it belongs there, but it originated there. So I always tell people like, and I think that's where the disconnect happens. Like when people are like, oh, but she is not practicing Ayurveda correctly. Yeah, but have the open door, let them come in, let them learn. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. There's this judgment sometimes that happens.
And you're feeling that a lot from like the Indian community,
Yes.
the judgment piece. Yeah.
I don't find that necessarily to be even the thought process of Ayurveda teaches you the exact opposite. It teaches you to welcome people. It teaches you to, open your arms. But I feel like we have this little disconnect where people just claim everything to be a religious property. And it's not. Ayurveda is a medical system, and anyone across the world can practice it. And even like, the rule of local, seasonal, and fresh, like a lot of people are like, my kids are not born in India, right? They do have the genetics. Their genetics will always digest dal chawal better, but they will also digest some other foods that are grown here locally, right? So there's so much that goes into Ayurveda when it's like adapting to a person. So not necessarily only dal chawal is Ayurvedic. That's like a common misconcept that I see rising in the Ayurvedic world most of the times. But going back to your question, what do I love about India? I love the culture. I love the colors. Even though there is this large part of community that claims everything to be religious, India is still one of the countries that opens their arms and hearts for almost everyone, and it welcomes, like, anyone can go to a Hindu temple with no restrictions at all. So it has its pros and cons everywhere, but yeah, it definitely is a country that is very rich in its culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. India is like so different for anybody who hasn't been there. It's so different than the United States. And Kirti's talking about the siesta in Spain and, people sort of being addicted to the hustle culture. And if you don't know, she lives in the New York metro area. So it's like,
I never belonged in Spain. I feel like I never.
You're like,
I was like,
no
guys,
manana
we
for
need to
me.
move. Yeah.
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 It's a great place to retire. Honestly, it's a great place to go back and retire. And that's what like my goal was, to kind of slow down, because New York can be very high energy. You were recently here, the moment you cross that bridge into Manhattan, it's just like whoosh, like my
Yeah.
mind works at a racing pace. So I find it important to kind of pull away. And I think that's one of the things that I have learned with Ayurveda also, to find that balance, find the balance, find your homeostasis where you can find the
Yeah.
harmony.
Yeah, I think I shared with you that that was my first time in New York. And I never felt like, a real American or whatever, because I'd never been to New York. I sort of was there when I was 12. I think we drove from Rhode Island, where I grew up, to go shopping one day, but I really don't remember it. And so I don't count it. And it really does have a different energy. And the reason that I never went to New York was because I lived in a city. I lived in San Francisco for 20 years. And every time I would go on vacation, I was really craving nature. I was craving trees, mountains, water, things that were not concrete, linear. wanting to be in a more natural environment. And the reason that I felt, because I don't live in a city anymore, I live in more of a kind of wooded suburban area. And so it was really different, kind of this idea of like increases like and opposites balance each other that we have here in this wonderful practice of Ayurveda. I felt like, okay, I have space in my life and I have a desire for more of that kind of energy right now. And I was just like blown away by New York and how beautiful and cool and fun it was. But I wouldn't have appreciated it because I felt like I already had so much city energy. And I don't think I would have thought like that before I had studied Ayurveda, really learning how to create a sense of balance and equalization in energies in my life. And I love how, with your journey, as you shared earlier, seeing your mom go through changes, seeing how she was before she learned about Ayurveda, seeing how she was during the process, after the process, how it influenced you, and then seeing that change for yourself is really cool. Where do you think Ayurveda is going from here? Where do we go with this thing next?
Sometimes I question that myself, like, where is Ayurveda going? Because there was a time, especially during the pandemic, where Ayurveda peaked right back up. And now I see, like, and I think a lot of it has to be with some misinformation circulating on social media, the way people are shoving it on other people's faces, which I don't think is appropriate. But I think if you really want to live, and this depends on the individual, right? A life of balance, Ayurveda can be extremely beneficial in your life. And it's not like you have to discard everything else and only live a life of Ayurveda. You don't. You can actually pick the best of both worlds and find what works for you. You have to go to a very good Ayurvedic doctor for them to tell you, hey, you're a future candidate for arthritis, for example, and you should start making these changes now so you never get there. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, again, this is just my perspective. I don't think that people who finish, an Ayurvedic therapist course or an Ayurvedic practitioner's course in a year without proper training, then they start consultations, right? So I always feel like I did the course and I never think that I am qualified enough to start doing consultations for people, because there's so many aspects of Ayurveda that one can miss. So that's why, like, to find that really good practitioner or doctor, it can take a long time. And I think that has where we see like this little bit of disconnect and some people losing faith in Ayurveda because they did not get the right guidance from some practitioners or even doctors. But there is this spiritual aspect attached to Ayurveda, which I always say, like, there's no research that can prove it, right or wrong. You believe in it, it'll work for you. And you can do research on spiritualism, because the moment you do research on spiritualism, the core of it just kind of disappears. So I think Ayurveda is still very powerful. It always will be very powerful. Even though we lost a lot in translations, what we have is very beneficial and very powerful. We just have to know how to use it for our benefit. But if someone wants to start today or tomorrow, you know, all you need to do is like sleep, watch what you're eating, just with those two strong pillars. And let's not even go on the third one. Just start those two and maybe like balance a little bit of your emotions. You'll see a big change. Like, Ayurveda doesn't have to be super complicated. And I think if someone can just kind of even dabble their feet a little bit in that world, they can benefit a lot.
Yeah. They don't have to get caught up in the dogma of it. They don't have to get caught up in I remember even just reading one book when I was a yoga teacher, just reading one book about it just blew my mind and changed the way I saw my body and how I interacted with the world and how the things around me affected me and how the foods affected me and everything. And I think ultimately that's really what this is about, is like self-understanding and then understanding the world through the self. And also, since you're here, looking gorgeous in the process. Because it's like this idea of beauty and health and wellness, they really do go together. Beauty is a part of wellness, right?
Yeah. The most asked question that I have on my platform is, what do I do? I'm losing a lot of hair. And my first question is always, how many hours you sleep? And I always get a response, 5 to 6 hours. And I'm like, sleep more. Your hair loss will be fine. No, but is there a pill? Yes, to sleep more. But can you give me an oil? I can give you an oil, but it will not work until you sleep. People don't like to hear that because they will do anything and everything possible, but not fix that sleep. So if anyone here listening to this podcast today is losing a lot of hair, how many hours do you sleep? And then check your iron levels, your B12. And yes, because it's
Thyroid
very
and
important,
yeah.
nutritional deficiencies can definitely cause it. But the first thing is how many hours you sleep. What does your stress looks like, right? The vata. It's like how much anger you have inside you, the pitta. All of those things like can impact your hair health. So, like, just the basic, and a lot of people find doshas very complicated and overwhelming. They're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. And you don't have to know how to do this. You don't have to do any of that stuff. All you need to literally do is understand what is working for your body and what is not working for your body. I had a salad today, and actually, I had the best, bowel movement of my life. So, you know which one's working for you and which one's not. And I think people forget to do that. Food problems, a food journal. It's again consistency if you can keep up with it. But just a food journal will give you so many answers and you will know what foods work for you and what foods. And right there, you will see your dosha.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go into doshas. You just have to learn to listen to your body.
And that leads me to the last question I ask every guest, which is, what does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Slow down and listen. I think with that, as humans, we are supposed to be smarter than any other species, right? And yet we tend to get into so many issues every now and then. And I think one of the reasons we lose that wisdom of our body is because we forget to listen to our body. So if we just start listening to our inner body, I think that wisdom can come back. Just like realization. People are afraid of silence. I can't sit and meditate because the thoughts are going to go everywhere. And like I had this question with a friend, and I was like, oh, I have these lower back problems. I don't know. That's what 40's like. And I'm like, 40's young, girl. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like 40's not old. You shouldn't be having back problems in 40's.
Yeah, that's a
And you
wrong
shouldn't be having that
conclusion.
mindset.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do you do yoga? No, I do this. I forget what type of workout. And I'm like, I hate yoga. And I'm like, well, you're not listening to what your body needs right now. In this particular situation, yoga can actually be very beneficial for you. But people miss that inner voice of like, let me listen to myself. Let me sit down. Let me take a step back, even if it's a few steps back. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. And with that, thank you so much, Kirti Tewani, for being here today on the Wisdom of the Body. And I know you're all over every social, but how do you tell people the easiest way to find you? Just Google your name.
Just look at my name. You'll find me on, as you said, every social channel.
She won't be hard to find.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Heather.
Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on the Wisdom of the Body.